So continuing on with Pike's idea, in the in the third and fourth paragraphs on page 2, I believe what Pike is saying is that it takes serious bravery to confront the evil. It takes an honest effort, and it takes daring deeds. It is much easier to be evil than to be good. It truly is. The longer I live, the more true that truism becomes for me personally. You'll see when you start approaching your 50s, 60s, and 70s how correct that assessment is. I promise. The onward march of the human race requires that the heights around it should blaze with noble and enduring lessons of courage, deeds of daring, dazzling history, and form one class of the guiding lights of men. There are people who really go out and do spectacular things for the benefit of humankind. That is what we need, that spirit in our breasts, to give us the impetus to say, yes, I can make a difference. I'm only one, but with the right attitude, 1 can become 2, 2 can become 6, 6 can become 99, 99 can become 10 million. That's the idea. It's a snowball effect, so to speak. And then he goes on to describe the idea of braving all risks, to perish, to surprise defeat by the little terror it inspires, and so on and so forth. Now to confront unrighteous power, now to defy intoxicated triumph over evil. These are the examples that the nations need and the light that electrifies them. In other words, it's time to get doing it. And it doesn't have to be grandiose, huge, magnanimous, and have CNN News or Fox News note your accomplishments. It is done in the small daily deeds and words and actions of life as well. But it begins with us as individuals, so let's start. I believe that's what Pike is saying in his last paragraph. There are immense forces in the great caverns of evil beneath society, in the hideous degradation, squalor, wretchedness, and destitution, vices and crimes that reek and simmer in the darkness in that populace below the people of great cities. In other words, he's saying there really is evil with groups of people. The poor, wretched people who are not setting goals in their lives to do the best they can for others as well as themselves. He says they only think of themselves. They do not think about the greater good of the whole. Just me, me, me. And they have 2 mothers: ignorance and misery. Well, that's not what we want. That's just not what we're after. Want is their only guide. They want. Their appetite only craves the satisfaction of their selves. Even these can be employed, though. And then he shows the analogy of the sand beneath our feet that we just walk on and trample on and don't even take a second notice of. Even that sand can be utilized, melted together, and made into glass or the most beautiful crystal to benefit all of mankind. So they have the brute force of the hammer, he says on page 3, but their blows help on the great cause when struck within the lines traced by the rule, ruled by wisdom and discretion. We can convert the energy of the groups of people into benefits for all of mankind, the world over, with intelligence, rule and right and justice. Also with rewards. It is this very force of the people, this titanic power of the giants, that builds the fortification of tyrants, however. Sometimes the tyrants get the people to work for them. So this is where the bravery of the good comes in, isn't it? This is where an extra effort of attempting to be as good and benevolent and loving and forgiving and working within the constraints of good legal law for the benefit of all, this is where this comes in, because even the tyrants have their armies. And then he goes to Rome. His example is in Rome under Claudius and Domitian. There is a deformity of baseness corresponding to the ugliness of the tyranny. Rome was a horrible place to be in some of its instances in its history. The foulness of the slaves is a direct result of the atrocious baseness of the leader, the despot, because he cares not a whit for human life. He enslaves people for one purpose, to give him the glory and the comforts of life. To hell with everyone else. That is what Freemasonry is absolutely against, is that attitude. It's the wrong approach. We fight that approach. And then he talks about the miasma exhaling from the crouching consciences that reflects the mastery. This is his poetic way of just saying the tyrant rule based on the baseness of the people and them supporting him. There's got to be a breakthrough somewhere. Someone has to take up the cudgel of righteousness. You have to take up the sword and shield of faith and the sword of the Spirit, and you have to wield that sword, and you have to cut through the ugly, the miserable, and the depravity, and begin shining the light. This is what every Freemason is supposed to be doing. We can start making a difference right now, today. You just got to decide. Every day we're confronted with the choices. Do I do what's right? Or do I not do what's right? Every day we're alive, we have these choices. If all 6 million Freemasons constantly strove to choose the good at all times, what kind of a difference can we make in the world? That 6 million could influence another 6 million, and then we'd have double the army. And then the 12 million could become 24 million, and the 24 million could become 48 million, and there's no end to the goodness we can share if we all decide we want a good, helpful world. And if we're too damn selfish and stingy for ourselves, what about the kids? What about our grandkids? You get to the age to where you say, maybe there is more to life than just me, and my wants, and my hopes, and my desires. Maybe there is someone else to live for. This is what Pike is getting at in his book on page 3. He's saying the force of the people will support the tyrannies if they don't recognize that they have a choice. There's always choices. And then he talks about the power of the rule of the tyrant, and the enormous sum of the people under him amounts to utter weakness to do what they need to do for their own benefit, because the tyrant squashes them down. So tyranny uses the force of the people to chain and subjugate. That is, to enyoke the people. Then they plow with them as men use oxen to plow. And we've seen that in the history of civilization several times in many different ancient civilizations. Thus, the spirit of liberty and innovation is reduced by bayonets. By force, they are kept enslaved. Principles are struck dumb by the cannon shot, while the monks mingle with the troops. Anyway, the military power basically picks up its own momentum, and it's not even ruled by the civil power. The hammer or mace of force is at work here. Independent of rule, it is an armed tyranny. A military tyranny is the worst kind of tyranny. Full grown, as a fiend sprung from the brain of Zeus. He's using his classical mythology allusions again. It begins with Caesar to rot into Vitellius and Commodius, more Roman emperors. He's just giving examples of the problems that can last for centuries if we don't decide it's time to do the right by the people. Misery can go on for centuries. That's not what we're after. Anyway, I'll keep going on page 4 in the next video.